in 1978 with Project Release. Don't know that either. That was the first, one of the early things in New York City when people were organizing in the cities. The first, we called ourselves ex-mental patients then. I'm a survivor of psychiatric assault.
That's right.
I was one of the people who did the work to get all these good things about free and informed consent and legal capacity into the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. One of the things in that, the second page of that, is some UN resources. If you want to quote, whether to your legislators or to anybody else you're talking to, if you want to quote from the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, or if you want to quote from the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture is saying that forced psychiatric drugging or electroshock could be torture or ill treatment, like I think our friends have been saying. That's in there. And if you want to quote from the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, where they say that it is against our human rights to lock people up in psychiatric institutions. It's against human rights that the U.S. has to abide by. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights and treaties that the U.S. has ratified. Those treaties right now are binding on the United States, and the UN has said that well, that's the question. We know the U.S. doesn't respect human rights all the time, right? We know that. Human rights is something that doesn't come without a demand. I think there was Frederick Douglass quote that says, "Power concedes nothing without a demand." The United States doesn't think that the UN should have power over themselves, the government, okay? In reality, international human rights is supposed to have power over every government in the world, but we have to make it happen. That has to be repealed. The whole of Article 9 has to be repealed. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, but if we start talking about Kendra's law being torture, legislators actually are making the connections for themselves, because I was part of a meeting, I think, I don't know, last year sometime, where we were talking to a legislative aide, and they said, well, you know, isn't inpatient commitment and forced inpatient treatment the same thing as the forced outpatient treatment? I said, well, yeah, it is. It all has to go. The outpatient commitment is just the tip of the iceberg. That's just the most recent thing that they've done to really keep us under their thumb and not let people get out. And I know I have friends who have been under outpatient commitment, and I know how really disgusting and devastating that is. But it's still only part of it. We have to get rid of the whole thing. And we have to make sure that the alternatives that we want to have in place, that the funding gets shifted, but we also have to make sure that these laws that give them the authority to lock us up and to force treat us are repealed. So I think, I mean, if people want to start talking to the legislators to say, you know, let's really talk about what the society would look like, what the mental health system would look like, what our lives would look like if we didn't have these things in place that allow things to be done to us against our will, allow things to be done that harm us, that the UN might consider torture or ill treatment. I think we can start to have that conversation. I want to let you know, I've been posting stuff about this to my colleagues around the world. In Australia, they were saying, hey, why can't we do what they're doing in New York? You know, we're part of a huge international movement, and all of us us have a responsibility to really work for the real thing, not to be satisfied with less than what we really want, which is full human rights. Thank you.
Stop forced treatment! Stop forced treatment! Stop forced treatment! Stop forced treatment! Stop forced treatment!
Depending on what facility you go to, they give you a different diagnosis. And some of them would even tell me, well, you seem articulate, you know what I'm saying? You're well, you know, your hygiene is up to par, you know. Nothing's wrong with you and kick me out of the office. I thought all of that was behind me, you know, when I came home. But what happened is when I started raising certain, you know, issues with regards to, you know, racism, you know, housing, the same issues you're addressing right here. My program, my doctors and everybody try to silence me by, you know, forcing me to take medication, and I refuse. And unfortunately, a lot of people is being forced to take medication because the mental health industry have a behavior problem confused with an actual mental health problem. And if you refuse to take medication, regardless of whether you need medication or not, they tell you have you sanctioned by the Department of Social Services if you're receiving public assistance. And if not that, then they threaten to have your Social Security income revoked. You know, so, and people don't have a voice, you know. The therapist is encouraging, you know, to stay active, but you can't stay active if you're drugged out of your mind, like 24 hours around the clock. You know?
Right. What do we want? And when do we want it? Now!
I'm supposed to talk a little bit about alternatives, and what I really want to say is community is the first place here. We have to stop the discrimination. There has to be equality, and then we can talk about a mental health system that offers people alternatives. Let me tell you, it's not assisted outpatient treatment. It's just another form of institutionalization of people. I want you to really think about what we have in our communities. We're venturing into Reiki. We're venturing into acupuncture. There's so much that can help us as a community. So when you're talking to the legislators, tell them this today, that there's more to the traditional medical model mental health system. It's our human right. And we're going to talk about more of that this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Listen, eat our lunch. We need to really rally. That's what I really want to talk about is it's cold out. But we need to stand up because there's people locked up. There's people on AOT that can't come here. There's people who can't get here. Some people are scared. I met a person that's scared to stand up and speak what he believes because of this law. So I want to leave you with this. We always do this. We have to walk out today and march out there and listen to people. We need to tell them what we really want. So I'm going to start off with this. I'm going to ask you, what do you want? You tell me human rights. And when I say, when do you want them? You say now. What do you want? When do you want them? Now. What do you want? Human rights. When do you want them? Now. What do you want? Human rights. When do you want them? Now. All right, so let's go do that today. Please talk to your legislators.
Know the truth about what's really going on, and we also need to have the opportunity to speak to other peers, speak to other people that are in the system. We need to have opportunity to have alternatives in hospitalization. They need to be putting money into community-based services and not institutionalization. These are the things that we need to be fighting for, and I know that everyone here has a voice, and I hope you guys use it.
Each one of us has a story. This is what most affects the change. Our stories and sharing it with these people who represent us. We vote. We put them into these positions. Now they must hear us.